Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, or good night, depending on what time you're watching this. It is April 6th, Thursday, 2023. It is 1:59 in the morning. Okay, this is the preface or preface, depending on how you want to say it, to 12 Poets. 12 Poets in its original edition consists of fairly numerous selections from Shakespeare, Donne, Pope, Wordsworth, Keats, Browning, Dickinson, Houseman, Yeats, Robinson, Frost, and T.S. Eliot. This edition, the alternate one, consists of selections from Chaucer, Ben Jonson, Milton, Marvell, Dryden, Blake, Byron, Tennyson, Hardy, Ransom, McLeish, and Roske. In this edition, as in the other, I have responded to my feeling that the careful reading of a number of poems by the same poet allows the students to hear enough of the poet's speaking voice to feel some security in their response. And though this response is not the same thing as understanding, it is a necessary preparation for understanding. Surely this is what we mean when we say that we have read Dryden or Blake or Hardy and so on. The language of oh, the language of the individual poems keeps adding up and redefining itself, so that poem 1 really does not come into its own with us until we hear it sounding through poem 20, where it works simultaneously to affect our response to that poem and to others by the same poet, those read and those still to be read. As in the original edition, I wanted in total combination of 12 poets a good historical representation and a general, although not exclusive, lyrical emphasis, but I wished none of these premises of selection to interfere radically with my personal preference for certain poets. Accordingly, some choices were easy. Jonson, Marvell, Dryden, Blake, Byron, Tennyson, Hardy, and Ransom had all been considered and reluctantly passed over in the original edition. Having used Donne, then, I thought it proper to choose Ben Jonson for this edition. Similarly, Dryden for Pope, Blake for Wordsworth, Byron for Keats, Tennyson for Browning, Hardy for Houseman, though Coleridge, Shelley, and Arnold were also possibilities. As for Chaucer, the original edition began with Shakespeare, and I wanted the alternate edition to begin with a Titan too. The middle 17th century is not represented in the original edition. Its poetry is especially to my liking, and I make up for the omission in the original by including both Milton and Marvell in this edition. Milton is difficult to anthologize. If one wants several complete poems and a minimum of apparatus, and I omitted him in the original edition for that reason. I have represented him here with the shorter, earlier poems, as I did with some anxiety with T.S. Eliot's poetry in the original edition. Marvell is a personal favorite, what I call a perfect minor poet. 6 of the poets in the original edition can be said to be major moderns: Dickinson, Houseman, Yeats, Robinson, Frost, Eliot. Indeed, this is almost an exclusive list. If one adds Auden, who presents copyright difficulties that are insurmountable, but a number of modern poets present an excellence that I thought well worth collecting in a volume of this kind. Hart, Crane, Lowell, McCullish, Pound, Ransom, Rose, Stevens, Tate, Warren, Wilbur, Williams all came to mind. I picked McCullish mostly for the poetry he wrote between 1920 and 1940. In listening to the post-World War I Lost Generation tone of him, that sound of innocence just lost, overtly pessimistic but unconsciously responsible about the world. I wonder why contemporary young people have not rediscovered him. I chose Ransom because, like Marvel, he strikes me as special and perfect. And I included Roth because I think he is the greatest American poet of my generation. But the premises of selection are endlessly arguable, and the important thing in this edition, as in the original one, is the poetry itself. As I said then, critical helps for the reader are limited to a brief biographical sketch of each poet and rather full notes to the hard words in the poems. I thought it neither wise nor necessary to supply any elaborate critical apparatus. I think it best that the student rely as much as possible on his own intelligence, his instructor, and his fellow students, and not be encumbered with the help of too much tailor-made criticism. I still believe that in the beginning, at any rate, the poem and the reader ought to be kept in a pure relationship with each other. If this purity results in ambiguity, and it often does, it is best to take up the problem then, not before the poem has been allowed to do its initial work with the reader. For help in preparing this volume, I am especially indebted to Mrs. David K. Leonard of the University of Chicago. Glenn Liggett, Grinnell, Iowa, May 1967. Okay, so that's all for the preface. That's the whole preface, or preface, however you want to say it. So thank you for watching.